welcome to another edition of Tampa Bay Insiders. Today we have with us our brand new Tampa Police Chief, Jane Castor. Welcome, Jane. I'm so glad you could be with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
I appreciate your coming down, spending some time with us. I just thought our viewers would want to know a little bit about you. You're originally from here?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Born
so
and
very
raised.
few people, correct?
One of the few, yes.
Yeah, right in Tampa proper, correct?
Raised out in North Tampa around Lake Magdalene Boulevard. Matter of fact, my mother still lives in the same house. Been there 46 years.
Oh, wow, that you grew up in? Mm-hmm. Nice. And you went to school right here locally? High
Chamberlain High School, and then I went to University of Tampa on an athletic scholarship, basketball and volleyball.
And you would be good at that because you're pretty tall. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. What did you study there?
Criminology, sociology, psychology, major in criminology.
Did you know you wanted to be a police officer right from the get-go?
No, actually I didn't have aspirations. One of my father's older brothers was a police officer, but that was really the only law enforcement in the Castor family. But criminology interested me, and then I had aspirations of going to the federal service when I graduated, but at the time Ronald Reagan was the president and there was a federal freeze on hiring. Some of my friends from University of Tampa went to work for TPD and said, come on over, you'll enjoy being a police officer. So really didn't know what I was getting into.
How old were you when you started?
I was 24 years old.
And what's your history been like at the police force?
I've pretty much worked every position in the police department, and it's a great job. There's never been a day that I didn't want to come to work in my 25-year career.
So you've been like a street cop?
Mm-hmm. No, started out as a police officer on the street, on the beat, and I worked as a training officer. I worked undercover narcotics work. I was a supervisor in sex crimes, child abuse, a supervisor in narcotics, worked administrative, worked several years in intelligence as a captain, and just worked virtually every division in the police department.
So in 20-something years, you've seen a lot of changes in our town?
Yes, there's been a lot of changes in the town.
Is it changes in crime, too? The kind of crime that we see?
I think that crime is always evolving and changing, but you still have the same basic types of crimes: thefts, robberies, homicides, those types of things. But now there's a little more of a focus on the economic crimes, fraud, identity theft, those types of crimes, and we've actually increased our economic crimes unit.
So we're being hit with certain crime in Hillsborough County. Is it different than it is, or in the city of Tampa, than it is in the rest of the country?
No.
Or is it this is happening everywhere?
Happening everywhere.
And these frauds and scams, are they something like I'm reading mortgage fraud and these kinds of things? Is that what you're seeing too? Just
about everything. A lot of identity theft, a lot of fraud that is being perpetrated through the computer system. Some of the people that you'll arrest say you don't have to hit anybody in the head anymore. You just get on the computer and you can get your way into people's accounts, get their information, credit card fraud, those types of things.
Are there precautions that you're suggesting people take with regard to this?
Actually, our economics crimes unit will come out and make presentations on that. But for the most part, just guard your personal information. Things like I actually had someone steal one of my credit card numbers some years back. And when you give your card in a restaurant or those types of things, one of the big frauds now is in ATM machines. And sometimes there's a card system that the criminals will put in there, and when you slide your card in, it will take all the information off of your card, and then something will come up saying the ATM is out of order. Those kind of things. Pay attention if it's difficult to get the card in and out, or it looks like
they'll put something over the
actually inside that slot. Inside the slot that you normally put your card in.
People are clever, are they not?
I tell you what, some of these people, if they put their intelligence and efforts towards law-abiding activity, they could probably make a pretty good living.
I once read many years ago that in the general population, less than 3 or 5% of the people are high IQ, but in prison it's something like 30, 40%.
Oh, really?
Like it's a really high number because They really are very clever. It's just nobody directed them, and so they end up trying to trick us all into something or another.
That could be.
Yeah, you've also played a role in our Homeland Security here.
That's correct.
Tell me about that.
When 9/11 came along, I was actually running the Intelligence Bureau, and by virtue of that, I was put in charge of the Homeland Security for the Tampa Police Department. In 2003, Tampa was named a UASI city, which is Urban Area Security Initiative, and we have received $57 million in federal grant funding.
What did that mean, getting that
2003.
designation?
Well,
That we were vulnerable, or
yes, that you had to have a certain population, you had to have certain vulnerabilities, such as the Air Force Base, large sporting venues, a port, those types of things. So there were a lot of factors that went into it, but as a result, we've received funding. The urban area is not only the core city of Tampa; it's Hillsborough County, Pinellas County, St. Petersburg, and Clearwater.
And that funding is to make sure that our port is safe and our MacDill Air Force Base?
Right, and that the entire community is safe. And we've purchased things like the new fireboat that was just delivered.
Yeah.
That was through federal funding, Homeland Security funding. The new radio system that the Tampa Police Department just put in place, $8 million, that was purchased with those funds. And there were also a number of software applications that would link all of these jurisdictions together. One that's particularly interesting is called CopLink, and I call it Google for police officers. In the past, if the Tampa Police Department had a series of armed robberies, we would have to call the sheriff's office in Hillsborough and Pinellas and ask them, do you have anything that fits this description? Well, what CopLink does is merge all the databases of these agencies. So if I run your name, I could find out that you had been pulled over and given a citation in Hillsborough County, or you had been the victim of a burglary, or any information that the other agencies have. So we've solved a number of crimes based on that.
Does that also link up with, besides Hillsborough County?
We have the Urban Area Security Initiative, as I said, is Hillsborough and Pinellas County, City of Tampa, Clearwater, and St. Pete. And then the state is broken up into regional domestic security task forces. And our region is a 9-county region. And some of the state funding had been cut. So what we did as an urban area was to open our boundaries to bring those other counties in. So we're rolling some of these software solutions out to those other counties.
Wouldn't this be great if it was national?
Yeah, it really would.
Would that ever happen?
Well, the different jurisdictions get to choose what software applications they're going to use. There are a number of agencies that are using CopLink nationwide. So, one of the other interesting pieces of equipment that we purchased was the camera systems on helicopters. Air Service helicopters for law enforcement agencies are a great officer safety tool, but they're probably one of the most expensive units in law enforcement. Hillsborough County has an aviation service, we do in Pinellas County, but St. Pete and Clearwater don't. So we purchase downlink cameras for those two jurisdictions. So if they have any kind of an incident that they need helicopter service, they can just call us, and then they can get these downlink cameras and see exactly what our helicopter's photographing. So in essence,
the cameras themselves are online?
Not online, it's a downlink camera. They are actually on our computers at the Tampa Police Department. I can log on and see what the helicopter's taking video of.
And this is from a phenomenal distance, is it not?
It's a phenomenal distance.
So the lenses on these cameras, you're able to do close-ups of what's happening on the street exactly?
Just the other night when we had that individual that got into the fatality, the traffic accident at Cyprus in Armenia, our helicopter was able to videotape just seconds before that crash happened, and they were all the way over in the airport, and they were able to zoom in with their camera onto that accident.
Unbelievable. You have a very large number of people that you're managing now, right?
Yes,
How
about
many?
1,300.
1,300 total staff at TPD with how many of
Just
those
under
are?
1,000 officers, sworn officers.
Oh, the rest are clerical,
civilian.
administrative,
Yes, support
civilians.
personnel.
And how big is the budget?
About this year, 132 million.
this doesn't count some of this other the
2010.
funding that you're getting from
That's
the
correct.
federal.
That does not include any
separate
of the
thing.
urban area security initiative funding.
So how are we in terms of population per, or officer per population?
We're one of
as
the
they are?
highest in the state. We're actually very lucky. The national average is 2.5 police officers per 1,000 citizens in a municipal setting. Counties, it's a little bit lower than that, but we have right at 3 officers per 1,000. So we're very lucky in this city.
Is that always adequate, though? I mean, I know you just gave me
Well,
the national.
yes, it actually is adequate in the city of Tampa, and we're very, very lucky in these tough economic times. If you look nationwide, one of the first places that they go to cut the budget is in law enforcement or public safety.
Seems like the craziest place to look.
Actually, that's what Mayor Iorio thinks as well, because she has publicly stated that she's not going to cut public safety, fire, police in this upcoming year. So we're very lucky.
And that seems more sensible to me, does it not to you? Because in tough economic times, doesn't crime naturally go up? I mean, if you don't have a job and you need money to pay rent or feed your children,
Right, a level of desperation.
You could actually commit a crime. Are there projections for crime to go up nationally or here in Tampa?
Well, there has been projections that crime would increase with the economic downturn, and as a result, as you may or may not be aware, over the almost past 7 years, we've brought the crime rate down in the city of Tampa over 50%. The beginning of 2009, as a staff, we got together to determine what our crime reduction goal for the year was going to be. Based on economic factors, we settled on a percentage, 5% for the year 2009. As of yesterday, we're at 18.1%, so it really hasn't had an effect in the city of Tampa so far.
So you reduced crime more than you expected to do?
Right, than our goal.
Given, and you made those projections based on, this is tough economic times.
Tough economic times, plus...
Historically, this is what happens, though. Is it or not?
But it hasn't here. We changed the way we do business when Mayor Iorio came in. When she came into office, unfortunately, we were number 2 in the nation. For a city our size, our crime rate was number 2 in the nation. And so that was one of her first directives, was bring the crime rate down. So the Tampa Police Department, we changed our mission, and our mission is to reduce crime and improve the quality of life through a cooperative partnership with the community, period. We cut out all of the ancillary services that we provided and focused strictly on reducing crime.
I think one of the things that's really unusual to me is that you have a website. I can go on there if I hear sirens or helicopters above my head, which sometimes happens since I'm across the river from Sulphur Springs. I can go online and see what your calls were. And that's something that's not typical in most places, is it?
I don't know that it's typical in a lot of places, but I can tell you that we strive to obviously keep the community informed. One of the reasons that we've been so successful in our crime reduction is our partnership with the community. The Tampa Police Department's relationship with the citizens of Tampa is the best I've seen in 25 years.
How do you think about that?
Look at that force multiplier. You know, if you have the citizens out there, the eyes and the ears, and they're calling. Well, the way that we measure it, obviously, it's difficult to do empirically, but all of the meetings that I go to, the neighborhood watch meetings and association meetings, in the past, I kind of joke with people and tell them that the police department is kind of the whipping post of all of these meetings. You know, we got blamed for street lights that were out and potholes, and it was always the police department's fault.
I noticed you get 911 calls for, like, change my light bulb. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
crazy things. I have
read
that people just don't know how to use 911.
Well, we are constantly trying to educate the community, but since we have focused on partnering with the community, you know, they're part of the team, so they're part of the success that we realize, but, you know, if we stumble, they're also a part of that as well. So I think that there's more satisfaction in being a part of keeping their community crime-free, their particular neighborhood. But there's also a sense of ownership. You know, they don't stand back and blame the police. How come you don't make my neighborhood safer?
Right, and I guess 9/11 really pointed out to people, it's important that I report something that looks really ridiculously
correct.
funny to me.
And every police officer has investigated some type of a call that went something like this, you know, a burglary, and they go to do a neighborhood survey, see if anybody saw anything in the neighborhood, be like, yeah, I saw that person unloading all their possessions. I thought it was unusual, but I didn't want to bother anybody. You know, we used to get those kind of calls. People just didn't
Don't
want to get involved.
Right. But
And now people are taking back their neighborhoods, and it's been very successful.
What are some of the initiatives you're doing, have been doing, or plan to do with regard to crime reduction, especially we're all concerned, I guess, with juveniles, and especially now with this economic
Well,
downturn.
one of the things we did in the very beginning, I tell people that the police department had kind of specialized itself into a corner. You know, we had police officers that would say, you know, I don't do traffic, I don't do DUIs, you know, I don't investigate this, I don't do that. It's kind of like, well, what do we do? So when Chief Hogue came in, we decentralized all of our resources and created a third geographic district. So there were smaller areas of responsibility for the commanders. So we have, in essence, we have 3 districts within the city, and they are their own police department. And that major has responsibility to bring down the crime with those resources.
So all of it, not just...
All of it.
I don't want you to raise DUI ticketing, I want you to do everything.
Right, and they have, now, in the past, they just had the uniform officers. Now they have their own detectives, they have their own undercover narcotics, street anti-crime units, they have their own crime prevention group. Even the school resource officers are assigned to the districts. So they have everything they need to bring the crime rate down, and it's their job to do so.
Okay, so what about with juveniles? Tell me about what you do to... There's always been such a large debate about juveniles when you hear some people in the community will say, just lock them up. They're bad boys or girls, and that's it forever. Try them as adults. Let's forget about them. And then there's people who say, look, you know, they come from a place perhaps where they didn't get a lot of direction. Let's try to help them out. I mean, you know, the debate has merit on all sides, I'm sure, but what are we doing?
Well, the 80-20 rule applies to the juveniles as well. There's a very small percentage of the juvenile criminals that commit an inordinate amount of crime.
What do you mean by 80-20?
And those are the ones that, you know, that 20% of the people commit 80% of the crime.
Okay. All right.
And that's the same with the juveniles. You know, they're a small group that just commit an inordinate amount of crime, just are walking crime waves. And those are the juveniles that we focus on, the Tampa Police Department. Juveniles don't, if they're found guilty of a crime, they don't have anything like probation, where if they violate it, it's a criminal offense. They're put on sanctions that include things like curfew, going to school. If they violate it, they get put right back on the same sanctions. So there's really no consequence. So, for example, auto theft.
Nothing happens if they don't do what they're supposed to.
And also, curfew was part of their sanctions, and we found out that juvenile probation, and nothing against juvenile probation, their funding has been cut dramatically, but that they weren't working in the evening hours, so nobody was checking to see if they were home at all. So our officers started doing the juvenile curfew checks, and that, you know, that brought the crime down as well, because these juveniles were where they were supposed to be at night. The kids that have sanctions that they have to attend school, they report to the school resource officer in the morning to ensure they're there. If they're not, the school resource officer calls the zone units, and we go out looking for them. More than once, we found them breaking into houses in the neighborhood.
What happens now, though?
Well,
they don't get the same sanctions
that's
again.
a problem,
but
too. And that's something that we've just started. We work very closely with the court system, with juvenile justice, with a public defender, and with the state attorney. One of the problems is that these kids will commit crime after crime after crime after crime. There's absolutely no consequence. And then they get up to 16, 17 years old. They're adjudicated an adult and sent to adult prison. Now, obviously, that's not fair to anyone. You're not going to get a productive citizen at the end of that prison time. So what we're doing is we've started a court just for these repeat offender juveniles, and it's volunteer judge and volunteer public defender and state attorney, to see that if we can intercede early on in these kids and they can actually receive consequence for their actions, if there can be some kind of a turnaround. In turn, what we want to do, there's obviously not a lot of funding, is to provide services for the siblings of these kids, because there's not much hope that they're going to do anything other than follow in their brother or sister's footsteps. And so, and that's, I hear at staff now of juveniles being arrested whose father I arrested when I was out there on the street. So it's that cycle, you know, and there's really not a lot of hope of breaking it. So we feel that if we can get these juveniles early, that there may be a chance of saving them, and then also to focus on the siblings in the house and see if, you know, if there's some way that we could redirect them.
With this new court process, are there greater sanctions now?
There's not greater sanctions.
Or can you not do
but
anything
it
about
just,
it?
the process happens quickly. So they don't go, you know, year after year waiting on court dates, sanctions, those types of things.
When did this get instituted?
It just started in October, and we're going to do a pilot process and see if it's successful, and then look for funding at the beginning of the year.
You almost need a nonprofit to step in there too, to hold their hand through this process, or work with the family or something. But that doesn't happen. A judge probably can't say you now need to go and figure this out or something.
It's difficult. It is very difficult. It's difficult for the parents who care, you know, and their kids are out committing crime. It's difficult for them to find assistance, and there's just not a lot of consequence for the young kids who commit crime. So by the time they do face consequence, it's adult prison. One of the other programs that we started with the Tampa Police Department and the Hillsborough County Schools is a civil citation program. And that's to keep the kids, one, they get immediate consequence for their action, which usually comes in the form of community service hours that they have to do, and they don't have a criminal record. For example, if it's a simple battery, they get in a fight in the schoolyard. It's a civil citation process, and if they satisfy their community hours, then they don't have a criminal record.
Oh, that's a good one.
So that's very positive.
What kind of plans, as you are just taking over as chief, do you have? What favorite projects or direction do you want?
Well, crime reduction is our favorite project.
Okay.
One of the issues, though, is that at the end of this year, we project that we'll have a 53% reduction in crime. Now, one of the...
over last year?
No.
Over?
No, over the past 7 years.
7 years, okay. I was going to say that's...
But one of the challenges that we're going to face, obviously, is the economy again next year. And then also we're working against our success. You know, every year it gets a little more difficult. But our deployment is a very fluid deployment. Whenever we see any crime trends coming to the surface, for example, a rise in the price of copper, you would think is really no big deal, but that sends our thefts through the roof. They're out stealing air conditioners, anything that has copper in it, and taking that to the salvage yard and selling it.
Okay.
So those are things that we have to react to very quickly.
Nobody's stealing gas then, I take it, even though we've gone through the...
Yeah,
that's
not
gone
yet.
Through the, not
we
yet.
haven't
All
seen
right.
that. Well, actually,
Okay.
we do have a lot of commercial gas theft. We have in the past when the price goes up high.
Really? And so that's what's it, because I heard of a neighbor who said her whole unit was gone when she came home from work.
That's it. It's for the copper. And they'll take, you know, a $5,000, $7,000 air conditioner unit for $75 in copper.
Oh, my word.
So, yeah,
That's not the
pretty
brightest thing in
frustrating.
the world. Okay, so given that, your plan is, okay, reduction of crime. Are there any new, I thought I saw something about technology that you want to institute. Is that more with this
Right.
CopLink or
Well,
other things?
it's not with CopLink, but it's with some of the Homeland Security softwares that are already in place. And the vendors are very interested in taking that from a Homeland Security arena and putting that into crime reduction efforts. So we're working with the vendors right now, basically along the lines of predictive policing, where you do offender management. You take those individuals that commit the majority of crime, and then you take your hot geographic areas in the city where the majority of the crime occurs, the calls for service, and basically merge those in this software system.
So then so that at some point you'll be able to do decisions about where to put more police
Correct.
or ahead of the curve or something like that.
And more importantly, the officers will have fingertip information on what's going on in their area of responsibility, all the way down to the point where we could have a moving map system where they can see the dots on the map in their area of geographic responsibility. Here's where a burglary occurred, here's where a robbery occurred, here's where this. So that kind of information.
So they can really plot out. We're down to just a couple of minutes left, and the time's gone very quickly. But I want to make sure that there are things you might want to say to viewers to help them either be more helpful to you and or to themselves, to protect themselves. So you have the floor.
Well, one of the key components in continuing to reduce the crime rate is going to be our community involvement. You know, we have partnered very closely with the community, and in order to continue this success, you know, we have to have community involvement. We have to have people calling the police department, getting involved when they see something suspicious, and then also preventing crime. Auto burglaries, for example, are one of our big four crimes that we pay attention to. And auto burglaries are 100% preventable. So if people would remove valuables from out of their car, put them in the trunk, put them out of eyesight, they're not going to have their cars broken into. Same thing with closing garages, you know, securing your home, watching out for your neighbors, those kind of things. And then personal safety too, being aware of your surroundings. Very important.
Terrific. So I guess we'll all be doing that and checking out the website to make sure that
Great.
we're following and looking for the most wanted and all those kinds of things. I appreciate so much your coming down to talk to us. We wish you the best.
Thank you.
Good
I appreciate
luck
that.
in your new job.
Thank you.
And we hope to see you back here again with any new programs you have.
Great.
Thanks for tuning in.